need me to start again, or are you okay? They got it. All right. Going forward, this is the November 13th meeting of the City of Sonoma Climate Action Commission. As chair, I'm pleased to call it to order, and we're going to move into the agenda.
We should do roll call first.
All right. We will do the roll call first, Natalie, as you're ready.
Youth Member Castro.
Here.
Commissioner Fogelberg.
Here.
Commissioner Heinerman.
Here.
Commissioner McCloskey.
Here.
Commissioner Nathan.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Vice Chair Conlon.
Here.
Chair Morell.
Present.
Everyone is here today.
Thank you.
Do you want to do the Pledge of Allegiance? I cannot remember about this commission.
This commission has had a standard policy of both doing it sometimes and not. I don't see it on the printed agenda.
But you can
So
add it.
if there is a request from one or more commissioners, I would accede to that. Otherwise, this is my week as a Vietnam veteran, and I don't see the need.
I see need for prayer.
Well,
Maybe.
Commissioner Heineman wants prayer. Would you like to lead us, sir, in prayer?
No, not I. I think you would be great.
I wasn't trained that way as a half Jew, so we're going to just move forward. All right, so we're going to convene and call the meeting to order, and we've had the roll call. The first item on our agenda this evening, fellow commissioners, is, as usual, the approval of tonight's agenda. Are there any comments on the agenda, any suggested alterations or changes? Looking left, looking right, listening. Not hearing any alterations to the agenda, I would declare it approved for tonight's meeting. With the agenda, the first item is comments from the public. I normally have the great pleasure of reading this paragraph for the public. Natalie and Jennifer, is that needed, do you think? Do we have people listening who need the comments from the public paragraph read out loud? No. Going once, going twice to the charm of that reading. We'll move on. This has to do with encouraging public comments and providing the rules under which they're made. The next item is the consent calendar.
Oh, you can still, I'm sorry. You don't need to read the whole paragraph, but you do need to open for public comment.
Oh, of course, of course. Is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? Correct. Later on, we'll have public comment open on each agenda item, sir. So this is a time for comments, not items not on tonight's formal agenda. Hearing none. Do we have anybody in the Zoom world, or we don't do that anymore?
We don't do that anymore.
Okay, so we are closing then the public comment, and we're moving to the consent calendar. And the issue on the consent calendar, as it often is each meeting, is the minutes of the previous meeting. This one was in the summer of August 14th, last summer, the commission's meeting minutes of 8/14/24. Do any commissioners have any changes to suggest to the meeting minutes? Tom?
I think I understand this, but it does say Fogg made a motion, and I think that's Commissioner Fogelberg.
Yes.
Yes, it is. I noted that as well. And yes.
I'll just
So
point that out, but otherwise I think these are good action minutes.
Are there any other changes besides Fogg into Fogelberg? I have one other, being accused over the years of being a careful editor. There's the word building, which should be buildings plural. That is the name of the ad hoc. It's about more than one building. It's all our buildings. Other than that, I would call for a motion to approve as amended the minutes provided to us.
So moved.
Second.
There's a moved and seconded. Any discussion of this motion from commissioners? Looking left, right, hearing none, I propose a roll call vote. Natalie?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Would be a roll call vote to approve the minutes under consent calendar, the minutes from last August.
Yes. Commissioner Fogelberg?
Yes. Approved.
Commissioner Heinerman?
Yes.
Commissioner McCloskey?
Aye.
Commissioner Nathan, Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Vice Chair Conlon,
Aye.
Chair Morrell.
Aye.
The motion. Oh, Youth Member Castro.
Ah,
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
thank you. Now we move into the meat of the meeting, a number of action items associated with our the work of our ad hoc committees that have been working basically for public knowledge. The main work of this commission occurs not in these periodic meetings where we have lots of fun, but in the meetings of three-person ad hoc committees that are focusing on a wide range of climate issues and trying to move us forward. So we're going to this evening receiving presentations and opening discussions of ad hoc committee reports on the climate action strategies. Jennifer,
Yes.
if you please.
I just wanted to kick off this meeting and just kind of bring us back to where we were almost a year ago now. Really, it actually was a year ago that we were approving the climate action strategies and before adoption. So there are some new members, and so I just kind of wanted to bring us back to Climate Action Commission and kind of start big picture and then narrow down and then before we start for each commission. So I had provided as part of the agenda packet information around the Climate Action Commission and ad hoc subcommittee guidelines that were created. So just as a reminder, Climate Action Commission is one of our commissions that were created. It's in our municipal code, and it specifically was created to act in an advisory capacity to our city council and provide them information specifically to sustainability and climate change. And there was a number of items, including the development of a city's climate action plan, the development, updating, implementation, communication of the sustainability work plan, policies and programs intended to implement provisions of the climate action plan, policies and programs to preserve and enhance our natural environment, and other such duties and responsibilities as delegated by the city council. So we took that, and I know before I got here you guys were working on a climate action plan, and we've kind of merged that into climate action strategies that you all adopted, and part of that and so all of that was provided to city council earlier this year, and they adopted that. We then took those climate action strategies, and as a group, at that time, Travis was no longer working for the city, and so there was no staff to really help move these efforts forward. And so as a commission decided that you would like to form ad hoc committees to focus on these different groups. So the climate action strategies had already been divided into specific categories, and we already had identified strategies to move those actions forward. And so the ad hoc committees were created to help implement those, recognizing that we don't have a lot of staff to help move these things forward, and so the more assistance that you can provide. We did develop the ad hoc subcommittee guidelines because we are basically we have to follow Robert's Rules of Orders and the Brown Act, and so we wanted to make sure that we understood what those subcommittees were doing. And so the idea being that you are 7 commissioners on this commission, you can have no more than 3 on a commission. The idea is just on an ad hoc committee, sorry. And the idea being that if you have 4, then you have a majority. This commission is advisory. You are not approving actual entitlements or permits and things like that, which is really when that comes into play, and is really important that conversations aren't being had. But we do want to make sure that we don't have Brown Act violations and don't have any concerns from the public about work behind the scenes kind of thing. We want to be as transparent as possible throughout this whole process of implementing our climate action strategies moving forward. And so we do have the climate action ad hoc committees. We have a new youth member that we wanted to put in. There's an action item towards the end about creating another ad hoc committee. We're already starting to see some of that overlap. The idea being that with what I asked for you all to provide for today was what you guys have been working on and where we're moving forward and what we need to discuss as a group to then move further forward. Because we work as a commission, and then agree to doing certain things, and then we come back into our ad hocs to actually start implementing those. Jacob and I are the main staff contacts for all of that communication. So if you want to find out more information from another commission or committee, ad hoc committee and things throughout the process, just please reach out to us. And always, if you have any questions about anything related to anything going on in the city, just let us know and reach out, and we're happy to talk to you or to bring something to your agenda at the next meeting as well. So with that, I will let you kick off your committee reports, and Chair, if you want to call your first ad hoc committee.
Can I?
Of course. Cedro, you
Yeah,
have the floor first.
I just have a couple questions.
Sure.
So part of what you're going through, the purpose of transparency with Brown Act, the way you described the ad hocs is about commission members and how many commission members can communicate at a time. But that doesn't preclude the ad hocs having external non-commission members, like experts, come and talk to them about, like if you want an arborist or something with the tree committee. Is that?
That's okay. Yes.
I just want to make sure that point is identified, just to make sure we're on the same page. And
Yeah, you
Okay,
can have
great.
outside experts come and talk about certain topics and things like that. The idea is just that the three of you are working together. You can have outside people come in. You can, we can hold a public meeting and invite the whole public as well. And then to just those an ad hoc committee meeting. All these are acceptable. The main goal is, obviously, we're trying to implement this climate action. We are, I want to be able to after this meeting, have direction for everybody, all the ad hoc committees, to continuing to work on your efforts. I want to say it's at the end of January potentially, or beginning of February, somewhere around there, that we'll be doing the goal setting for City Council, and at that time relay what we have done, where our status is for all of our commission work. Climate action, sustainability was identified as one of the council goals this last year. My assumption is it will stay on it. And so we also are working on the general plan, as you all know, and sustainability will be part of that general plan. And that my goal is, after that general plan, we actually do a climate action plan and have the funds to hire somebody to come in and do that with us. Okay?
Couple of reactions to that excellent opening presentation. One, in that goal setting for this year, the City Council did approve trees as a major first priority, and we do have a trees ad hoc, so that's a piece of interaction between the City Council goals and the activities of this Climate Action Commission. So that's good. It's also possible for the Youth Commissioner to be on any of these without worrying about the three commissioners, since the Youth Commissioner isn't a voting member. So we encourage involvement within reason with respect to your time frames and your other priorities to join one, or preferably even more. I believe Kendall Clemens, who we appreciate all of her work, was on at least two of the ad hocs quite actively. So it's possible for you to be there, and that doesn't break out the rule of 4. So let me start then, unless there are any other commissioner comments in preamble before we go into the first presentation. Commissioner FOGRLBERG, you have the floor.
One comment. I want to take an opportunity to thank Kendall, even though she is not here, so for it noted in the agenda, for her time and efforts. She was really stellar, and we will miss her, but we wish her well as she moves on. And officially welcome Elena. We really value your presence and the community that you represent at the school. So thank you for stepping forward and taking the time to do this. And I think I speak for all the commissioners. You can meet with any of us to talk about or ask us questions or comments. We really welcome it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I would add to that welcome and appreciate getting email and phone communication information so that we can reach out to you. So if we can do that this evening at some point, that would be appreciated. Any other Commissioner General comments before we start this series of action items? Yes,
I
Leah.
have one question. Is there something due from the Trees Committee for the City Council in January?
No, there's nothing due for January. Like I said, the climate action strategies were adopted by City Council, so that is Climate Action Commission's work plan. And so my intent is after this meeting, I'll end up checking back in with you guys for all the ad hoc committees and any additional ones that we make, probably in January before they do the meeting, so I can get an update from the individual ad hoc committees on status of things. We don't give a really detailed report on status at these meetings, and so it'll be very high level of some kind of like highlights aspects.
Thanks.
And our official next public meeting of this body is in February? That's right.
And with that, I'm anticipating there may be a special meeting called as we accelerate our work, as I intend to have some final comments on that topic later in this meeting. So let us start with the first of the ad hoc presentations, discussions, action items, and so on. According to the agenda, we have education and outreach listed first. This includes Amber Ward, Norma Fogelberg, and myself as the three commissioners on this. Norma, would you like to lead the discussion of this? Having been a prime mover on the discussions of that ad hoc, as I know.
Sure, I would. On page 19 of the package that was sent by Jennifer and Jacob and Natalie, you will see an outline of my report. The first piece of information is I wanted to reinforce that the Education and Outreach Committee is here to support all of the ad hocs, and you'll find them listed, and I'll double check and make sure that they're the same ad hocs that we were given with our package, because there was some little bit of confusion. But the bottom line is that we would like to get information from the ad hocs, and Jennifer, it needs to go to you, right? And then Jennifer will send it to the Education and Outreach ad hoc, and we will look and see how we can put that out there to the public, to our residents and in other places, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. So please remember that while we've created some of our own projects in the ad hoc, and I know we have Mark here tonight to talk about one of them, we represent the entire commission. The second item on the report from our ad hoc is we being the ad hoc committee, working with the city, Sarah Tracy in particular, to really start to update our communication. And we're going to be looking at the website first and foremost. So if you look at page 19, you will see the links that I would appreciate all of the commissioners looking at and letting us know if there's anything that they would like to see done differently. We can't guarantee it because it's really the city's responsibility, but we want your feedback and we want to make our communications dynamic and not static. So the photograph that we sent will be part of that communication asset, library asset. So if you would take a look at that and get and send your comments to Jennifer, I'd appreciate it. And then also, item number 3, we are going to be starting Climate Action Sonoma comments in the newsletters that come out. So please be sure that you subscribe to the newsletter, and if you are not sure how to get it, I guess you have to tell me through Jennifer, and I'll send you a link on how to enroll in that, and any other newsletter or any other commissions or particular news that you would like to receive. So you can see from this, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but we have 4 bullet points identified initially, and we want to keep the public informed, and we want to make it engaging and inspiring and not flat. So that will be our intention as we move forward, and your thoughts and even criticisms are really welcomed. So if we didn't hit the mark on something, please let us know. Item 4 brings us to current projects that the E&O have started. And Amber, can you start us off by just sharing what's happening with the elementary charter school and their recycling project?
Thanks, Norma. So we have started partnering. We want to have community partners, so that way it truly is an outreach with our community. Jana, who runs Refill Madness in town, she has kids that are at the charter school, and so we worked with her, and she was really interested in helping create a project with the school that would be something that we could talk to her about and help her out in any way that she might need. So it could be something that the Climate Action Commission could outreach on. This is there's been sort of a rapid bit of emails going out this past weekend and today, so I did a cursory glance at what she sent over today, but it sounds like the charter school has this, the Green Team?
Yeah.
The Green Team, which is student-led, which I think is fantastic. They elect an entire committee, and so they wanted it to be, what do the students want to see as a plan at the school? And it sounds like the focus wants to be on their waste program and how to better sort their waste and learn how to do that. And I do think that would be a great tool, because that's something they can bring home with them, and they can bring along with them to other friends that aren't at that school. So I think it's a phenomenal form of outreach, and next steps we'll see who their actual provider is, where Recology is what we're hearing, and if they have the proper recycling bins and all the bins and everything that they can get from their providers, and then meeting with them to see if we want to talk with the students and help them communicate with their friends on how to do this. So it's just beginning. Part of it was, the school year had to start. There was a lot of conversation in the summer. Now the school year has begun. We have this student government that has decided what they want. So next steps are in place right now, and I'm excited to see what to bring to you next time.
Thanks, Amber.
Let me just interrupt briefly as chair. We're covering so many topics this evening. What I would love to do is introduce the opportunity for public comment after each of these sub-presentations, rather than waiting for several. So with that in mind, is there any public comment on this initial piece? There'll be more coming from education and outreach with regard to the charter school. There'll be other topics coming up later, of course, but what I want to do after each one is to see whether we want, whether there are any public members here this evening. We're pleased to have you here with comments. And hi Beth, the basic rules will be that I didn't read all this at the beginning just in case you haven't had the pleasure 100 million times like some of us. We'll be asking you to state your name and so on to begin the public comments, and then the normal rule is 3 minutes, but we're a friendly crowd here, so we will be reasonable on that. This would be specifically on the charter schools. Some of the other issues will be coming up subsequently.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Beth Hadley, and I live in Boys Hot Springs, and I am here as representing the Sonoma Valley Democratic Club. as you know, the elections didn't turn out the way we hoped, but we really want to focus. We decided our energies, especially this coming year, would be well spent focusing locally. And of course, climate change and climate action is a huge topic. And so David had contacted me and invited me to this meeting. So we want to find out how our club can support your actions in Sonoma Valley, possibly at the charter school, possibly at other schools, and then I'll wait to hear what other plans you have. But thank you for so much for inviting me, and I hope we can work together.
Thank you. Thank you, Beth, for being here. And with specifically with the charter school, you may have members of your group who have children at that charter school, and that would be an excellent way for your club to provide some support to our emerging climate action efforts here in Sonoma. Thanks again for your support. We need the support from everybody, including, of course, the Sonoma Democrats Club. Norma, back to you.
Thank you. So before I close on the charter school project, Elaine, if this is a project that you think you might be interested in, it would be great if you and Amber could connect.
I do think after we get it off the ground too, it could be a fun opportunity if there's any community service.
Yes, I would be interested
crossover.
in doing that, simply because I also attended that charter school up to 8th grade, so I'm still pretty involved. I volunteer there all the time. So.
That's a great fit. Yeah, thank you. And also, I just want to say thank you, Beth. We need as much communication as possible on these topics, since I think it's going to be a harder slog. And anything you can do, we appreciate, and I'd like to connect with you directly offline. Our next project.
Just before you move on, I would simply note that while Kendall Clemens was our youth member, Kendall and I did a number of presentations at the high school, and we'd be, in the spirit of schools, charter school and elsewhere, be happy to re-engage with that kind of work.
That would be great.
Norma, back to you.
Okay. Thanks, David. So our next project is called Climate Smart Tourism Project, and it's with the Sonoma Chamber, and we've invited Mark Bodenhammer to say a few words about this project. We are very committed to engaging partners around these projects, and Mark, you've been really terrific in engaging with us around this. So would you like to just talk about the project?
Yeah, I would love to. First of all, I would like to thank Chairman Morell and Commissioner Fogelberg, or ComFog as she is known in the minutes, for their teamwork and collaboration. It's been really great getting this project started. As Commissioner Fogelberg mentioned, we are starting what we're calling the Climate Smart Tourism Program. The wording, we're not 100%, we'll figure out the exact logistics on the word. But what we want to do is develop standards for hospitality businesses in our community so that they can, promote being good stewards of the environment. They can have sustainable practices, and the reason for doing that is twofold. One, we want to recognize the businesses in our valley that are already doing those things, and number two, we want to obviously encourage and inspire other businesses to also join those efforts. We met recently with Vice Mayor Farrar Rivas. She's committed her support and that of the City of Sonoma on this project. Also have input from the Visitors Bureau and Vintners and Growers, our partner business organizations, who are also excited about being a part of it. So we'll all be working together on this. Eventually, we're going to expand to other business types. It's not just about tourism, obviously, but those are kind of a homogenous group. They're used to working together. It's kind of the low-hanging fruit. So let's make some incremental progress. Let's get this program started, and then we'll roll it out to other groups and, frankly, residents as well, if we can find a way to do that. Schools and other nonprofit organizations, whoever we can bring this concept to, we're looking forward to doing it. So what we've done so far, we've put together a small committee of business leaders from food, wine, and lodging businesses. They recently had a quick meeting just to kind of discuss the concept. And I have good news and bad news. The good news is they're excited about the Climate Smart Tourism project. The bad news is they are really excited about diving in way beyond that. They are setting some ambitious goals for themselves, and they're going to come back in and really want to partner with you guys, and they'll be challenging this commission in the city to get active. They want to develop some partnerships with the Ecology Center and see if we can attract some grant funding to do some things that'll really help other businesses, achieve these goals without extra costs on themselves. And so we're looking forward to partnering with you guys. And again, just thank you guys for working with us.
I'd also like to say thank you to you, because out of the meeting we recently had with Mark and Tim and others, the conversation of Earth Day came up. And while you're standing at the podium, perhaps you could give a little bit of overview about what we talked about for Earth Day, or would you like me to do that?
I think I'm going to defer to you on that.
Okay. Well, Mark stepped forward and really offered assistance with that as well. But first, Mark, I really want to thank you for the Climate Smart Tourism organization and stepping out in front of it and really taking the lead.
Yeah, no, we're excited to be part of it, so thank you guys.
And there are a couple of action items that come out of this for us this evening. Mark, again, I join Norma in thanking you for your participation in this and your team, and we're eager to move forward with this aggressive effort. With respect to the idea of raising funds for effort, we do have a grants committee that's going to come up later in this discussion, and we will encourage the grants ad hoc to receive requests from the Climate Smart Tourism team and from other working groups, ad hoc committees, to funnel their requests for grant support into the grants subcommittee when we come to that. The action item, as I'll say, is there any other public comment on this topic before I have an action item to put before my fellow commissioners? Seeing none, basically the action item is for us to appoint 3 commissioners from this group of 7 to participate with the 3 members from the chamber in an ongoing committee effort that will really focus the energy in between these occasional commission meetings. This could be either done through the Education and Outreach ad hoc, or it could be one or more other commissioners in a grouping of 3. And I felt it appropriate to raise that issue with the commission as a whole this evening to see who we want as a commission to work with the 3 members from the chamber in a 6-person working group on climate smart tourism. One last thought on that. While the word tourism is obviously an important part of our economy here in Sonoma, it's also a huge part of our vehicle miles traveled contribution to air pollution and carbon emissions. So the whole issue of transportation of tourists to, through, and around Sonoma becomes critical to our total VMT, vehicle miles traveled loadings, and thus is germane to the core of our efforts. So any commissioners have anything else before we move to a discussion about which 3 commissioners could be appointed to this? Mr. Tom, Vice Chair Tom Conlon.
Yes. Thank you, David. And that's great. That's inspiring, and I'm excited we're getting started on this. I just want to be sure we're kind of standing on the shoulder of giants that have gone before us. So, and I'm probably sure that Mark knows about the Green Business Program, and many of his members are going to know about that. But make sure that we at the commission here are thinking about that as one of the potential pieces of this program. I know that there are several certification standards out there, and maybe that's something that, similar to what was done in the trees report, looking at some of those standards that are outside already, we could sort of look at those, decide which ones are the ones that make most sense here in Sonoma Valley. And David, thank you for bringing up transportation, because obviously that is the biggest piece of our emissions pie chart. We need to grapple with that as hard as that is going to be to do. So those are my comments. I'm looking forward to supporting this.
One of the hot issues, Tom, and others, has to do with the potential for an electric shuttle. We've had discussions already about this. This will take fundraising and organization, but it's a critical issue for this new 6-member committee to focus on that over time to get both tourists and non-tourist residents out of their gasoline vehicles, even out of their separate EVs, into a shuttle bus that's electric. And there have been some early tests with a non-electric shuttle from the Tourist Bureau that we're encouraging, and we want to move forward aggressively on that. That will take some real attention and some real money and some of the other public involvement that we've already heard about this evening to move us forward as a leader in this regard. So I would solicit comments from my fellow commissioners on nominations or how we want to approach naming 3 of the 7 of us to work with the 3 chamber members in a 6-member committee.
I have,
Leo, you have the floor.
thank you, David. So I have a career that I would say makes me the most knowledgeable person about the California wine industry that could be on the committee. I have run a company for 45 years that has worked with 250 of the companies in Napa Valley. And I think my experience is this, that all the grower organizations are interested in marketing. So they're interested in the commercial aspect, and they have a large interest in squashing the change in any grape varieties. So they're very, very sensitive. And it would be interesting to see if we could do something that would, I don't want to say apply pressure to them, but bring some standards in. For example, this valley is on a scale of valleys that are parallel to the Pacific Ocean. This one is in a better position than Napa Valley. And Napa Valley is already moving to change the varieties that they're going to plant. They have to keep it very quiet, but they're looking for other grapes, and eventually Cabernet is going to get replaced. But the growers here are a little bit behind, and they are, as they put in these vineyards with Merlot and Cabernet, you know, they're doing it in a low-cost way, much lower than Napa. So they're going to get wed to the wrong varieties. And there are growers, though, in the area that are planting the varieties that will be planted. There's more of that going on in the ground here. So it'd be interesting if we could somehow get that into the conversation. I mean, what would be very interesting to a tourist is to go to a place that was planting or selling wine made from Italian varieties, not Chardonnay. But you could imagine we wouldn't want to come out against Chardonnay. Sure. Yeah, so I'd be interested in providing some both insights and oversights in that realm.
Thank you. Thank you, Leo. I believe that one of the 3 members from the chamber, Mark, is likely to be from the wine industry, as we've discussed. Is his or her name able to be publicly announced at this point?
I'm sure he's fine with it, yes.
Yes, it would be Sam Couturi, who comes from a family that's very well known here locally. So Sam is potentially one of these 6 members of the 6-member working group.
Yeah, he is a great selection. Made fantastic. Yeah.
Can I just
Can
offer
I-
some thoughts?
Yes, of course you can.
Can I make a recommendation? And then I would recommend maybe a little bit more information about what the goals of this committee are in regards to, because everybody's going to have a different approach to what climate smart tourism means. And so maybe when that group met initially, maybe there were some initial thoughts and goals of where that would go. I mean, we've already heard a comment about green business. We've heard a comment about the wine industry as a whole, making better, smarter climate choices. So I think there are broad topics, and then there's very specific topics. And so I think it would be helpful to maybe state some of those initial goals, and then as a group kind of talk through like maybe who has experience or who has a desire.
Yeah, Jennifer, I think, Mark, that would probably be a good next step for us.
Is it a
Come
Yes.
on. We're open to interaction here. The idea was a 6-person working group initially, 3 from this commission, 3 from the chamber team, working on climate smart tourism across the board in some incremental manner. But Mark, you have the floor for more thoughts on that from your point of view and your team.
Sure. So two things I want to, or one thing to clarify is that each of those industries will have multiple people participating. So we've identified kind of a leader from each industry, and then they can also round out the committee with extra people. So Sam will be the representative for the wine industry. He'll also include other people just so that it spreads out the work and get more ideas in there. With regard to the kind of loftier goals of planting different varietals, I think the intent was to identify some standards that are good for today, some standards that are achievable on, you know, the regular budget that people can work towards sort of immediately, but also we do want to adopt that kind of second tier of stretch goals that people can adopt if they can, or work towards, and just know that, you know, using the expertise that exists up here on this board, other industry leaders, set those kind of further reach goals for people. And if we have some people who are willing to jump into that already, that's great. But also we want to make sure that we don't start off with this being so far out in advance that nobody's able to be recognized. So we'll kind of have a 2-tiered system. At least that was our intent, but obviously we're here to serve the commission.
Thank you. Norma, you had some comments on this, then I have a few of my own, but you go ahead,
No, it's
please.
okay. I just don't want to, yeah, I'm just thinking time, so go ahead.
Yeah, basically, we see this group as supporting the climate action strategies and their implementation. There's a lot of vision for this. We think this could have a great deal of impact as we begin to take real action. The transportation issue came up early and often. As I mentioned, the possibility of a shuttle at some point. We also see this as a potential excellent way to encourage grants, knowing what's going on now, and less likely federal grants, but foundations, I think, will be quite interested in a well-known, if small, city where its Environmental Climate Action Commission is working jointly with the economic core of the area in supporting that kind of joint effort. It's not true everywhere, but it offers an opportunity. And to jump into something that I was going to be explicit on later, but it's quite germane here, the current opportunity exists for us to be increasingly active on climate and climate effective action as a way to be positive in an era where many of us may be moved toward resistance and negative action. But the climate action arena is one where we can take positive action and be proud of it. And that can even relate to some of the broader comments about the broader community working with this commission, being active being active in a positive manner, where certain elements of government may be a little less active and positive than they were perhaps envisioned a week or 2 ago. So money and also expertise, bringing together the expertise of the chamber teams, not just the individuals on the committee, but they're representing their broader interest groups, and our commission bringing a lot of expertise to the table, and that then relates to the grants and the funding and the action. Yes, ma'am.
I'm probably going to echo a few things that you said, but one of the things
Echo away.
one of the things I think is really important about the idea of a sustainable ecotourism focus is, where do we get the most bang for buck? And when you're talking about having the vintners come together, the tourism and economic community, if we look at benchmarks in other communities and what they've done, being able to compare like attributes that we have in Sonoma with benchmark communities, and then see where those award-winning benchmarks come out. And I know you've done this because I've read some of your economic policies and your gross regional product benchmarks with other communities. They have the same thing, of course, with ecotourism and the idea of regenerative ecotourism, which is sort of now superseded the idea of sustainable tourism. It's kind of moved on into lived experiences in ecotourism. And so looking to see how those 3 lead groups where is the gap in the groups, and what is it that somebody can bring to that to push us up and over the hill with something new and different, is really what we're trying to get to, rather than join the table, be in front of what's happening in the world. That's the only thing I really wanted to add there, because transportation is more than the perspective of what is it that we are trying to catch up to, but what is it that we're offering that we haven't thought of yet. That's the big issue for experiential tourism and regenerative tourism, I think.
Jennifer, I'd like to pick up your point about the possibility of needing more structure to this, and holding on the identification of other commissioners at this time until we work through some of the comments that were communicated at this meeting, and then we'll flush it out.
So I'll also just remind everybody, so an ad hoc committee, again, you work together. You come to the table of the commission decides. Individuals on this commission, nor the ad hoc committees, do not represent the commission. So decisions are made as a commission itself. When, so we're working together on this concept, I think that it was presented to us by the education committee. I think it's fine for the education committee right now to kind of to give it a little bit more with the chamber to, like you were saying, both Commissioner Nathan and FOGRLBERG, is find what those needs are based on what some of those goals are from the chamber and the business side of it. Is it more of the small picture right now, and coming to the group to find more information or the bigger picture items? There are a lot of things going on. We are all working on a lot of different products and projects. And so we need to also be realistic about how much we do at this time. And this is one of those committees because there are so many different topics that would be involved with the chamber.
Yeah.
I do want a staff person, Jacob, to be at those meetings to help make sure that we're all in the same understanding of what is going on, and then also if things need to be pulled into a commission meeting or go to council for any kind of direction, that happens at the appropriate times.
Understood.
That makes a lot of sense, to keep the interaction at the moment between the Education and Outreach Ad Hoc Committee of its 3 commissioners and the team emerging with the chamber, and with staff available whenever possible to interface with that. Is there any other concerns of commissioners about that approach? Leo?
Yeah, I think technically the outreach and communications or marketing shouldn't be setting up in the selection of members. I would object to that. I would say that if people are interested, I wouldn't mind being involved right away. I think my management skills are plenty. You know, I've been president of a couple companies. I've turned around 250 companies. I don't think I need marketing in the way, because that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, it's not marketing, Leo.
Yeah.
It's education. So it's education and outreach. So you have to think it's not business development or marketing.
But I think I'm looking at Mark, and I can see that you're concerned about the business and getting a nice fit, you know, that we don't move too quick. For example, the wineries want to move at a pace, and I know that pace. I know what it is. It's a multi-year pace. They don't want anything to cross the line of visibility about this climate stuff, let's say for a year. And then they want to know that it's going to roll out, and they're ahead of it. They would want to educate their staff.
Let's be clear, it's not just wineries we're talking about here.
Right.
We're talking about the hotel industry. We're
Right.
talking about the food and beverage industry in the town. The wineries are a piece, but only a limited piece. I would think we could reopen this over the months as we move forward with the existing structure.
If I could say too,
Yes, sir.
to echo, this is the first I've heard of this. And I still don't have a good sense for what would be beneficial to your group. And I've heard a lot of things in general. And one of the strengths of this group is that we have a lot of different things we do well, and we sort of blend together because there's certain people who have expertises in other areas. And let's articulate what helps you the most and what you really want to focus on, and let people think about, can I help or am I going to get in the way?
So the reason why, the reason why I was, Commissioner McCloskey, I was saying is keeping the education outreach that was their idea to start with, and it was a way of getting the businesses involved in climate change as far as the education component and outreach. And it was an outreach moment for the chamber, to say, hey, we want to educate more of these businesses around tourism and our climate change impacts here in the city to start with. That being said, though, the reason why I was saying just to continue is from the education component to gather that information, because this group, the education and outreach, their intent and the goal of that group is to gather information from all of the expertise here at the commission and outside, to gather that information to help share that through the different channels. This did come up a little differently than I would have expected, in the sense that I would have grouped them into potential outreach and communication channels, and so it looked like it's kind of developed into something a little bit more. But as being stated and referenced here, it needs to be shaped a little bit more from the chamber's perspective of what their goals are too around this. And so I would recommend that when we come back together, if we do a special commission meeting or in February or however we want to do that, that the chamber by that point, this 3-member group of the chamber comes back with, here's our actual things that we want to do this year. And then we identify those. Because ad hoc committees also, just for remembering, they only should last a year or they should be a project and that end of that project. So these ad hoc committees are only intended to be for a year to accomplish these strategies that we have identified for 2024 and then for 2025. That's it. And then we're going to redo all this work plan and start again. So there will be change as we move along. Does that make sense to everybody too?
Thanks, Jennifer.
Tom, looks like Tom wants in on the game.
Thanks. So this is a great, helpful discussion, and I'm glad we're having it. I don't have any problem with continuing the discussions under the Education and Outreach group that's made such progress to date. I do think it's important, though, for us, as we were talking about, what are the objectives, to start to get more clear about what those objectives are. Clearly, there are going to be business development and marketing objectives, and that should be expected, and I support that. That's why I mentioned the Green Business Program, which is largely built around that. But Leo brings up a kind of a risk that I hadn't, frankly, been thinking about that much, which is the actual climate atmospheric risks of our economy, and the dependency, for example, of the different valleys on different climate regimes. I imagine the businesses are thinking about those. I don't think the city is thinking about that very much. Maybe the city doesn't need to be thinking about that per se that much, but we do have some expertise on this commission, and just making sure that we get that out there as an objective for the group to be thinking about. We are an advisory role here. We can't actually move the ball very much, but we are going to be dependent on the city council and on the businesses to implement anything that any ideas that might get dreamt up in this group. The other thing about objectives, we have focused in this commission to date mostly on mitigation objectives, but adaptation is going to be pretty important to us moving forward. And so Leo brings in that climate adaptation, that natural adaptation. I also want us to be thinking about business adaptation. Personally, a little bit like Bill Gates, a little paranoid in my business thinking, but there are potentially existential risks to hospitality in an era where transportation gets much more expensive because if carbon dioxide pricing were to be integrated into the price of travel. I don't know how many businesses are really focused on that in our like our restaurant industry and our local hotel industry. I don't know how much modeling of that they've done, but these are things that I think about. And not that I want to scare anybody about that, but I do think we would be remiss in our role as the Climate Action Commission if we didn't at least encourage those conversations. So that's where I like to see this conversation go, and looking for creative solutions, which we know the business community in California generally, but especially our area, is capable of coming up with solutions.
Thank you, Tom. Very insightful.
So this is
Sandra,
where
you're on.
Tom and I do this. So this is exactly what I'm talking about, because I think this is a risk for business, and I think they are paying attention to this because it's a mandate that sustainability and climate change impacts business, and they have to get engaged with this, especially tourism, which is where this idea of regenerative tourism is involved, especially with tourist destination towns. And transportation is paramount for that. And so business industries that rely on tourists who want to have good experiences have got to put their hand in and start playing in the climate arena to make experiences better for tourists in climate change efforts. And so we were seeing it in the food industry, where food businesses, because the climate change is impacting agribusiness. We're starting to see this now much more in tourist industry businesses as well, because people are interested in not going and sitting in places, but having experiences in cities and places. And so therefore, transportation now is looking at things like bicycle tours, walking tours, and the environment has to have a meaningful experience for people. And so that has got to be part of what they're looking at for it to be a meaningful tourist destination. And so it behooves these industries to have skin in the game on this. It's not going to be a viable industry otherwise. And so that is a central component. I mean, so if you're talking to some of the businesses that are in town, they know that already. They're looking for ways to deal with it. And so that's why I'm saying, look at some benchmarks at other cities who are ahead of, they're a little bit ahead of the game. We should be there ahead of the game and be prescient with these things as well. You've got people on this up here who are very smart about what to anticipate with climate change, but couple that with some business needs so that you're not behind the curve, so to speak.
Thank you. Also very insightful. Norma, next
I think this
thoughts?
has been a good conversation, and I really value the input that everyone has shared, because it does take this conversation to another level. Yes, Mark? Please.
Yes, please.
Casual format here. This is much nicer than the council. So
We'll
couple
see
things.
what we can change in there.
Exactly. So I just want to open it up. We're open to all kinds of different ideas. We don't need to have. Yeah, I appreciate all of the input. I made a ton of notes over here, and really appreciate you guys adding context to what we're talking about. But want to just encourage you guys to also think about segregating some of these things. I think that there is an opportunity to have a small focused program that was kind of like what we were discussing, but we can add to that, and we can also create additional dialogue between this panel and the business community, and I would love to facilitate that and be more active. So don't think about it as we have to do all of these things within the context of this one component, and we can split it up into different pieces and make it different subcommittees and ad hocs. We're happy to work with anybody and just connect you guys with the business community. There is real interest in making meaningful change. They are, our entire economy here is based on tourism, which is based on wine, which is not going to work if the environment isn't healthy. So they all see the need. One of the things we heard at the initial meeting was they don't want this to be greenwashing existing business practices and just move on, pat ourselves on the back, give out some awards, and nobody ever talks about it again. They really want to set meaningful goals. So step one in a longer term discussion, and we're just happy to work with you guys.
Excellent, very encouraging on so many fronts.
David, can I add one point?
Yes, sir.
Keep in mind, though, that the role of this committee is to be advisory to the city council. So we can't really, yes, we all believe strongly in what we're doing and the importance of climate action. But the reason you come here is because we give you some access to city council that you don't have on your own. So yeah, we'll have lots of great ideas about things that don't have anything to do with city council. But when it comes down to it, the three people who you're going to have are the most important thing we can do is talk to city council about how can we implement some of the ideas.
And Philip, that fits perfectly with the fact that at our the most recent planning meeting at the chamber offices, we had one city council member with us. So we're beginning to feed into that structure as well. So, and that presumptively will continue that way, as Patricia Ferrara-Rivas has been interested, particularly in this issue.
Okay, so moving forward, Jennifer, do I need to have an action motion?
No, I think we agreed as a commission. I think we know where we stand. I don't think we need to vote on it. On this item specifically, I think there was one more item you guys wanted to discuss.
Yeah, there is,
with
once we wrap this
group,
one up.
and then we'll wrap up this.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
and I would agree with Jennifer from a chair's perspective. We had some great input, and we can proceed to begin to really make this happen and to make it happen in a significant way. I would just also remind us that we have a goal of net zero by 2030, and time is ticking. So that becomes an important piece of the puzzle to work with our colleagues in the business community and the environmental community, and at least one political party, if not two. They're welcome to the game as well in a positive way. So in order to pull all these pieces together, so till we make this sort of some of my thoughts for an hour from now or whenever we wrap up, the word action in Climate Action Commission. Norma, your next point is probably Earth Day.
Yeah, so this is my last point. You can all read about various ways we are proposing outreach. In my report, item 5, but I would like to, and I'm not going to go into that because it's presented to you. The last project that David, Amber, and I have looked at is our commission supporting Earth Day. And I guess we need to request from our commission the approval for the CAC to take a lead on the planning of that.
That's my understanding, that tonight we'd have a vote, and if we have 4 or more in favor, we'll go forward, and if not, we won't.
So I would like to say once again, my thanks to Mark for this, because the Chamber has said they will help with this. Some Rotaries have said they will help with Earth Day. We hope, Elena, that the students can get involved with this through the high school. And I realize we're going to have to put some meat on those bones, but we have reserved a date pending the approval here. And I forgot which date it was, but it's
April 27th, I believe, is the correct date. It's a Sunday.
Happens to be my birthday. It's April 22nd, which is why they picked it as
22nd.
Earth Day, because it rhymes with birthday.
So your birthday and Earth Day are the same. However, we would be celebrating on the weekend.
Yeah, we'll
Yes.
celebrate on the subsequent Sunday, both your birthday and the planet. I believe, I'm not looking at my notes, but my memory tells me it's April 27th, a Sunday.
okay. Yeah,
And we want to do a 1-day, not a 2-day event for purposes of not killing ourselves overly, just minimally.
And we're looking at like 11 to 3 or something like that, and having it very engaging.
And we've had initial conversations with with Lisa Jensen, whose title is Events Coordinator or something like that for the city of Sonoma, and with Sarah Tracy, who's the outreach publicity staff for the city. So they're both on board tentatively, should this commission agree this evening that we will go forward as a body in being the lead. And we'll bring in a number of other nonprofits and other active groups from the community in supporting this in a variety of ways. We've begun to have discussions about presentations at the little auditorium, whose name I'm forgetting again. It had a cute name, Gunderson or something.
Yeah, the amphitheater.
At the amphitheater, and a variety of events on a one-day program to truly celebrate Earth Day, again making a statement about being positive on climate.
So what I'd like to do at this time, because the other conversation was so valuable, but I'd like to hone it into 5 minutes because you all have other things to report on, and I'm very cognizant about that. Are there any comments, suggestions, recommendations off the top of your head that you would like to suggest for Earth Day? Because our purpose as a group is to have these discussions, and then we'll put something together, send it to you, Jennifer, and you can send it out to everyone so we can keep the communication flowing. But if we can take just now 4 minutes, anything that you want to communicate about Earth Day that you would like to see happen or you have considerations about?
I'll just offer a few words. So I've watched Earth Day bounce around for years with different sponsors, and at various times, I was part of teams that did Earth Day events at the Plaza, for example, and I think it's great for Earth Day to be owned by this commission now that we actually have a body that does it. The risk is that because event planning is so time consuming, it can become a large fraction of what we spend our time on. And so if the outcomes of the investment in time are proportional, then it makes sense for us to be doing it. If we're just spending all our time organizing an event and then people diffuse after the event and we don't have positive outcomes that are really climate action oriented, it's not worth it. And that's one of the reasons why other organizations I've participated in have stepped back from hosting Earth Day events in the past. I think it's great if you have some other entities that do have interests, like the Rotary, and you said Chamber and others might be interested. Wonderful. So I think it'd be great to try it out this year, but keep that in mind as well. We're going to have our outreach portfolio, our whole program, so having an annual event to kind of show it off is a great idea. So good luck with all of it. Wonderful.
And your involvement, sir, will be eagerly sought as we move forward within the constraints of the Brown Act to find ways for all 7 commissioners to play, and not just the 3 who are stuck in the leadership role. We know how tough this can be, but we also want to focus it on climate and climate action and really start to make a difference in that regard.
And I'm willing to forego any presents that you were going to give me and instead give it in service or give a donation. No more presents this year on my birthday. Thanks.
Is this presents or
So
presents?
noted. How gracious of you. And we are starting this, at least in the initial conversations, to be like one quadrant of the plaza and not take over the whole plaza and go beyond our reach, because really it's too much. And yeah. So my request is that we take a vote and confirm that the
Would you like to
CAC
make a motion as
Yeah.
Commissioner Fogelberg motion?
Sure. I make a motion that the CAC take a lead role in creating Earth Day 2025.
Thank you. There is a motion on the floor, fellow commissioners. Is there a second for this motion?
I second.
Amber has provided a second. We have a motion and second. Discussion, comments from commissioners, birthday boys and others.
Yes, I have a question. By taking a lead role, do you mean each of the commissioners?
No.
Okay.
No.
Your role will evolve as appropriate as one of 7 commissioners, should this
Really,
motion pass.
I think really what's most important is that we have your input, because as we just experienced with climate smart tourism, there's lots of valuable thoughts here. So,
Right. Just to clarify, it's thoughts that you're asking for.
correct.
And the approval of our name as a commission being on it.
Just me? Just clarifying.
Thoughts and recommendations.
One question, would
Yes.
that, Jennifer, become a project, not a subcommittee or an ad hoc committee?
So it would be, right now it's going to be the education and outreach. It's one of their outreach events that they would be doing next year. So that's the idea behind bringing back Earth Day. We haven't done Earth Day, I think, in 2 years, at least a year. And so it's just to bring it back to see how it goes. And then we may, Climate Action may choose not to participate and just leave it to the city. But if you leave it to the city, then it may not happen like it didn't happen this year. So I think that's the idea behind Climate Action and Education and Outreach Committee, is to bring back opportunities to educate our community on the importance of what we're doing.
And I would just add that while it's Earth Day in April, we would focus this year in theory on climate. This is a climate-focused, which is more core to this commission than the broader range. You can argue it all touches, to be sure, into the climate issue, but we want to really focus on our climate action strategies in the face of Earth Day, and involve each of the other ad hocs for their inputs as appropriate, both their thoughts and maybe their actions, as other ad hocs inject information and suggestions to the Earth Day planning team, if the motion passes.
So let's call the question. Let's have a vote.
The question is called. Are there any other comments before we're closing comment on the motion and calling for a vote on the motion? Do we need the motion restated? No. We're ready to roll. Natalie, are you going to call the roll, please?
Yes. Commissioner FOGRLBERG,
Yes.
Commissioner HINERMAN,
Yes.
Commissioner McCloskey,
I'll abstain.
Commissioner Nathan. Can you use your mic, please? You don't have to do anything.
I'm
Yeah.
concerned about you guys, actually. We're not doing it. Oh, yes.
Was there a vote, a yes or no, or pass?
It was, yes, there.
There's a vote. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Vice Chair Conlon,
Aye.
Chair Morrell.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0-1-0. Oh, Youth Member Castro.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
7. Thank you, Mark.
The motion passes 6-0-1-0.
Thank you. This is a long meeting. Are you done with
I'm
E&O?
complete.
So E&O is done despite the 7:20 hour. I think a brief break might be appropriate to catch our breath and come back as close to 5 minutes as my esteemed colleagues can manage. discussion with the grants and funding ad hoc, which is composed of Commissioner Nathan, Commissioner Conlon, and myself. Tom or Cedra, did you want to make a summary presentation of what we're put forth on grants, or have me do so?
I mean, we did, thanks to mostly to staff and Commissioner Nathan's work, did get a grant off before our last meeting. We found out that that was an unsuccessful effort, but
We loved it though.
but the exercise was really helpful. And I think now that this grants committee is formed and is actively hunting for new opportunities, that can do nothing but bring good things to the city. So Jacob did put together for us an online resource that we can keep track of these things, and I just look forward to and everyone should send us your grant ideas.
That's the key point, and we want the other ad hocs, as they identify needs for climate action in their purview, to suggest to the grants committee through Jennifer and Jacob, for Brown reasons, that the grants committee begin to work on acquiring the funding for that. So that's the real role here. I don't think grants is going to be out looking for grants on its own. It's here to respond to the needs of the other working ad hocs. And there are lots of grants possible. My guess that in this upcoming era, these will be less federal funding and more foundation support. And I think catching the eyes of interesting foundations will be a possibility. The whole idea of working between the climate team and the business community on tourism could be very interesting for the grants group to pursue. And there will be similar actions in the building area and others where the grants team can be supportive. We're here to respond to the interests of the other ad hocs, essentially. Any other comments from the grants team members? Any questions of the grants team from the others who aren't on the grants team?
Did we want to talk about rainwater capture and pocket forest at J.E. Carter?
Those are both potential items for which funding is needed, so thank you. Did you want to start that or have me dominate this?
No, go for it.
Okay. With respect to the possibility, there are really these two items. The trees committee really should be in the lead on J.E. Carter, the trees ad hoc, coming to the grants committee with the possibility. It will not need a lot of money because there is already irrigation there, but we need money for the Milwaukee Forest consultant to define the kinds of plantings that work in Sonoma, and the number of trees and so on, and get a pricing on that, and then begin to work out labor. We initially had hoped that high school labor was going to be available through the Earth Care Club. That may still be the case. I haven't been able to follow through with Kendall on that, but that's something to look at. So that has minimal cost, but it's not zero. We do have a local arborist ready to support us, John Meserve, and the John Donnelly of the planning of the PROS Commission, the Parks, Recreation, and Open Source, is very supportive of moving this together jointly. So a little bit of funding, I'm guessing that's between 12 and 25K total. So it's not a lot, but it's more than we can come up with out of our own pockets on the J.E. Carter. With respect to the rainwater capture system, it's a very interesting opportunity. We've had an initial, it's not yet a design, but an initial concept done with an expert from Sonoma Ecology Center. And it's important that the Ecology Center follow up on that directly, but the Grants Committee could help in finding the funding to support the Ecology Center expertise in defining a proposal that could go for grant funding. The other piece of that is that there is a county operation immediately adjacent to the city corporation yard, and it might be very interesting to do a joint city-county project rather than city alone. And just a last thought on it, it'd be very interesting if the city is purchasing a new street sweeper, which will be an electric vehicle, and to put rainwater in it rather than potable water would make it a totally green operation. We could even put green uniform on the driver, whatever he or she was wearing. Thought it could be a really nice green statement for street sweeping. There's no need to have potable water used for street sweeping. So both of those would be areas where the grants team could support those efforts.
So just as a reminder too, before we go after any grants, projects, and any funding would have to be approved by City Council. So these two projects are not actually identified on our list specifically. The Green Pocket Forest idea is on the trees list as an action, but the location was not identified. That would have to be cleared first by City Council for the use of the park for that purpose. And as far as rainwater capture project and design, again, just something that when we go after funding or use funding to pay for expertise or anything like that, depending on the cost, we have procurement policies that we have to follow.
Understood.
We also I'm going to ahead and bring it up since we're talking about it right here at the grants section, is the last recommendation for a discussion that we can hold to the end. Is just a placeholder to remind us that we do not actually have a water ad hoc, and so that is something that we would need to create. When we talked about the Cash for Turf program and the rain barrels and things, we had identified that being for outreach, because they would create the program materials to offer and to educate around rain barrels and create those programs. We did not have funding to actually purchase and do reimbursements around rain barrels, but I did provide outreach, I think, group with the information on the grant that we just applied for water, and because we need to look into what the restrictions are around the use of those grant funds, which is the only funding that we have for water conservation. So we can create a water ad hoc and they can focus on all the things water, because we do have a set of strategies around water, or the outreach can just create those materials.
So that becomes a decision for the commission. Do we want to add another ad hoc, or do we want to have the outreach and education group, which is already pretty active in a number of other time-depending circumstances, to do it?
Yeah, as your fellow outreach, right now, we're at our limit, especially with the approval of Earth Day. So then the question becomes, who wants to stretch and go on another ad hoc? Because I don't know, I can't spearhead it.
I understand that, and as a active member of the education outreach team, I fully understand and agree. So it seems to me we'll either have a water ad hoc, or we'll postpone these projects for the foreseeable future, or some other ad hoc could sort of think trees might need water, and so that's a way to suggest. But those are probably our three options. Commissioner Nathan, next steps.
Actually, I was going to suggest trees and water seem to go naturally together to me, so I would say you could put it in there as a home.
Well, I'd just like to review what is in our strategies reduce use of irrigation, install real-time monitoring of water consumption.
And review the program, the turf, I thought it was review the turf first serve.
Right, so that, those are the two big goals, and then there are multiple actions under those. So expand and modify cash for turf program, encourage use of rainwater capture, public and private properties, offer discounted residential rain barrels, prepare and implement a community-based social marketing plan, and then encourage water conservation by high users. And then that second one is install advanced water metering infrastructure.
The modified part that I thought was interesting.
So is the proposal
rainwater
to,
capture piece and the reduction of potable water usage are both germane to this possibility at the corporation unit.
so I believe I understood the suggestion being that the water scope, that full scope would be added to the trees ad hoc, and that would be part of the scope?
Well, we don't actually do, we pick, if I understand, based on the past things, there's been elements that we would pursue as an ad hoc. We don't, in a given year.
Right.
And so, some of those things, we would,
2024.
yeah, that we would pursue and make progress on. And I think that would be reasonable, because some of those things we've actually discussed in trees.
Right.
That's why I was like, well, we've discussed some of these things in trees already, so it seems like to me, put them officially in 2025, the ones that we've discussed already.
Like any of these strategies, and as we discussed, yes, they're all the waters are 2024. However, AMI is already going. We don't know what the results are going to be until 2025, 2026 with the AMI results, so that's kind of on hold. And then the rest is around the water capture aspects. So I think that if you guys do want to, you can. So that can be the vote, or you don't have to vote, you can do straw votes, you don't have to do a motion and things. But of joining those, adding the water to the trees committee, ad hoc committee.
So that makes sense to me. I think, the other thing that I noticed is we haven't been doing anything with organic materials and compost and that whole waste set of objectives. And
Doesn't fit within our current working ad hoc directly, the 1383 process, and it's,
right, and that's
it doesn't fit within the structure of the ad hocs as they're currently. So we'd either need another ad hoc, which I'm not sure there's a huge enthusiasm for, or we just sort of let the city and Zero Waste Sonoma and so on. This was a big deal of Travis when he was with us, to be sure.
So this goes back to why we had identified the outreach. Again, outreach is to educate, right? And to make sure that the information on our website and the information being provided is up to date and is giving that information. You may not be the know-alls about that. And you are not creating anything new around it. It's just to help promote that. And this is where the chamber, these are the programs in which you are really key with the chamber and the businesses as well. And he was doing regular meetings with the chamber groups and providing education around the regulations. So this is where I want to go back to, like, there's certain things that we've already identified as a commission when we did the strategies of who would be doing what things and why we only had 5 to begin with. Staff is going to work on everything, but as a group we had decided outreach was really going to focus on the education materials that were being produced and shared.
So Jennifer, if I'm hearing you, we're not producing the material, we are just making sure that it is sent out to communication channels, but the materials itself will be given to outreach?
The materials are all there in most cases. It's a matter of updating, making sure links are up to date, the information is current, And so, and that's where, you know, some of that is just, you know, learning more. If you're going to have an education program on recycling, I would hope that you are looking at the regulations around, you know, recycling and our new rules around glass and things like that. So it's not just providing education to the children, but it's also our businesses.
So, as long as I'm not and I'm saying I or we are not generating the material, not copywriting it, not creating graphics or brochures, we're actually given the material as complete. You know, I think we could take it and send it through outreach. But I just know I can't commit to any copywriting, any creation of materials at this time, not with Earth Day around the corner.
And I think that's where it would be a really good crossover.
Interaction around the corner.
Yeah.
I think it would be a really good crossover then, because if trees are taking on the actual legwork of it already interacts with tree work, and then asking through Jennifer, like, hey, can you maybe, we would like to focus on this right now. Can you make sure that you get this material out through outreach? So I think it would be a good crossover opportunity.
Yes. It just as long as it's not the creation of the material, but sending the material through outreach channels.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to bring it up because Travis really did have this domain really nailed. He was really expert in this area, and we built this ad hoc kind of around knowing that was already kind of handled. There is a monthly, I believe they still meet monthly, the Zero Waste Countywide Task Force that makes all these materials and does keep up to date on the laws and the new regulations. So what I can do is, I've been meaning to reconnect with that group. If there's anything that is relevant of this list, push that to Jennifer. She can make it available to the Education and Outreach Committee. I'll just make one more comment, is that since Travis has left, we no longer have they've got a new compost distribution program in place where they use hubs, and we don't have a hub in Sonoma Valley. So that would be something that I'm thinking about for the future, is trying to set up a hub here in the valley where it's easy for people to pick up compost, hopefully at no cost, because we're actually subsidizing quite a bit of compost for the city.
That's a major issue in 1383 implementation statewide. All the counties and the major cities are struggling with that aspect of the law, which really pushed beyond what was easily feasible given everything else on everyone's plates.
Okay, so does anybody not agree to joining water and trees together? Okay, seeing none, then we're going to do that.
And that takes us to the, I believe, unless there are further comments on we're moving now to, have we done trees? We sort of slid into it through water. Are there other materials on, we finished grants. The next presentation is the trees ad hoc committee. Nathan, Conlon, and Morell. Cedra, do you want to lead that conversation on where we are with trees and urban forestry and all good things? Even just below the top of the game, it's a big gap.
All right. So we've been doing a lot of things that trees have. Trees are the functional tool with in terms of accomplishment, and so one of the main strategies, some of the main strategies, that we've talked about was trying to get more trees into the city and having the city recognized for its trees. So I'm going to take the latter one first, because accreditation and recognition, then just you get into a virtuous cycle, because once you're recognized, then you want more trees. The tree recognition calls in from bringing in more trees. And so we talked about becoming a tree city. And so what I had done with my other ad hoc members and also talking to our new cemetery manager was look at what these different accreditations are. And some of them have fiscal requirements that would put some pressure on the city given where we are, and some of them don't. Tree City actually does have one. It's a $2 per capita requirement, and so we might not quite be ready for that yet, but there are other ones like Tree Cities USA, which is an outgrowth of that, and ARBNet, which is more of a scientific association that don't have that and have attributes that might be useful for us to consider. The ARBNet one is interesting because it looks at diversity of trees and is a professional society and also gives you access to some grants and funding as well. The City Plaza has 44 unique species and 247 individual trees. To have accreditation level 1, you need to have 25 species of trees. So we're already meet accreditation level 1 easily. Last year, you had to have 50 species to meet accreditation level 2. They've just bumped it up to 100 species. However, if we look at the mountain cemetery, it might be possible for us to get accreditation level 2 fairly easy as well. So there's some useful things about having these accreditations in terms of the professional societies that you get to be associated with and the notoriety that it brings to your city, especially for tourism purposes, in terms of it showing that you are walking the talk, so to speak. The other thing that we've tried to do was look at ways to go about increasing our tree infrastructure, green assets. Some of this work was what we did with the general plan overlay and updates and the various comments. The kind of what we think is really exciting is having a greenway overlay. It's a civil code that is identified or associated with blue water lines, and then it doesn't change your underlying zoning, but it does mean that you can put in policy that allows the city to interact and work more with increasing your recreation and trails. And so it's actually an active transportation benefit by having a greenway overlay. And it's part of defined as part of an open space code. So it's a layered element. So we're working with Jennifer about getting that completed and trying to figure out exactly how that's going to be defined and the boundaries for that. But we know we're going to have it along Sonoma Creek and probably parts of Nathanson and Friars Creek, because those are the waterways in the city. We had hoped to have the Sonoma Valley Unified School District increase trees on their property. However, we didn't quite realize that some of the turmoil of consolidation was going to get into the way of their area, the ability to focus on something like trees with us. And so that proved to be overwhelming. So ergo the shift in focus to city parks now more than unified school district lands. However, we hope to come back and still focus with them on unified school district lands. So the idea is to be positive with them while they go through their self-organizing and still pursue parklands in the city for canopy increase, focusing on the west side and the south side because that's where we have tree inequity. Trees in our ecosystem, canopy coverage should be about 30% canopy cover. In that area we have 21% canopy cover. And so the idea from looking at the CAL FIRE grant is to increase canopy cover and hopefully someday have a no net less policy, but that's yet to be determined. I think, and then the other action strategy was creating cool corridors, and that's part of, looking at those areas for cool corridors and canopy cover increase, and identifying through the active transportation plan and the master planning where we have areas that are not supporting people in terms of movement and connectivity with canopy cover. Okay, is there anything else?
Not from my point of view. That's an excellent presentation of a lot of work a lot of movement forward. The ongoing interaction with the pros committee is very important from this commission's point of view. I've been happy to interact with Chair Donnelly and keeping the two commissions at least communicating at the chair-to-chair level, which appears to be allowed under the Brown Act without having to go through City Hall directly. And so John Donnelly and I are in communication, and we are looking for opportunities to move forward and bring grant activity to the grants ad hoc for the kinds of support that we would need to move forward with some actual planting. The one thing otherwise I would add, there's a great deal of interest from the city of Sonoma's sister city team in having 7 sister city trees planted, one for each of the 7 sister cities of Sonoma, one of which is in Ukraine, interestingly. So that conversation has had fits and starts going on. Once again, will require funding, but the thought is that that's not a large increment of funding when we move forward potentially with a green pocket forest, with the irrigation system and so on.
One more thing I forgot to add. Chair Morell was correct about interaction with the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Committee. That committee has I think a tree committee subcommittee, and they are developing a climate forward tree list and has talked about having a joint meeting with us on the topic of trees. And so I think that's also something that's in process. So just want to mention that.
So just a reminder about trees, we met with, Climate Action Commission met with the pros and Planning Commission, and we set out our trees focus. And so the first 2 items were to do a tree inventory and our canopy coverage. And so Jacob has finished the request for proposals. So we're getting ready to send that out. So early next year we'll start getting going on that project. But we did get funding from City Council with this budget cycle to do that. So we will be starting that. And just as a reminder, we were going to start there to then figure out what we have to set our goals and to do our urban forestry management plan from that.
So that's great news. Good luck with the RFP, and let's hope we get some good qualified response. I'm wondering how the accreditation programs would map into that activity, and whether the objective that I think I see in one or the other of these for expanded number of species, is that do we really need multiple species, or what's the driver of that objective? And just an open question for me.
Can I get the question clarified? When you said how does it fit into that, what is that?
My question is, I think of our objective at the commission here is increasing our canopy, increasing the coolness of our city with canopy coverage, and increasing the stored carbon in trees. Species is a little outside of my range of expertise. So it's like, are we trying to encourage biodiversity? Are we trying to encourage resilience of tree species? Is that something that is that a reason? Are these standards encouraging our objectives of climate and carbon, or are they more biodiversity and resilience oriented?
Are you asking why there's number of species as a
criteria?
Why the ARBNet has that as a criteria?
Why ARBNet has that as a criteria? Yeah.
I don't know why ARBNet has that as a criteria.
The reason I'm asking is I'm trying to understand if we have any recommendation to the pros committee or the city on one or the other of these certification standards to choose.
Okay.
That's the context of my question.
I see. Okay. I was like, I don't know what went into there. Well, for us, the number of species is, as Jennifer is saying, we have to do an inventory first. We might have that number, so it is a matching game. So if we have already have a unique number, 100 unique number of species, then great, we are at level 2 accreditation. Does that, am I missing something?
Right, but I'm trying to ask the question, say we're at 86. Do we need, 14 new species? What benefit does that give the city of Sonoma to add 14 other than to hit this threshold? Is that inherently beneficial?
Oh, you're asking, should we do that?
Should we do it?
Oh, got it.
Is that a reason for us to pursue one of these certification standards versus another?
Yeah.
I just don't understand the
And
objective.
I would add to that, or at least comprehend, what's the value to the city of getting one of these accreditations? What do we get for doing so?
Okay, should we do that? So that's a different question. Should we pursue this? And there's different reasons you may or may not want to pursue this. I can't really answer that, but I can give you reasons why people like to pursue that. Whether or not that's reasonable for us to do, I can't answer that. There's a biodiversity reason. There's a number count reason because, rah, 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 I've got 100 species. There's an interest because there's more places for tourists to go for, sort of like a quest and, as a museum kind of cataloging. Yeah, Arboretum, there's that. There's habitat reason. There's health because when you have biodiversity, you have less disease risk if you're thinking about communities. So there's 5 reasons there. Now for the city, I don't know if any of those reasons are worthwhile or not, or if there's a mosaic that is of interest, or if it's just that we're counting to see if we meet a level and whoops, we are at 88, so we're going to stick with accreditation level 1 because there's no reason to do that. That's perfectly viable as well. Or it could be that we have a list of climate forward trees, and as over time, as we start to find that trees that are currently in our city aren't able to survive in an increased warming condition and we have to put in new species, we find that we have 100 species just through natural attrition and replacement of different species, that over time we found ourselves at 100. Well, now we're viable to be at accreditation level 2, not through a purposeful pursuit, but by happenstance. Then we might as well have pursue that accreditation because it's useful to do so. So being aware of what those thresholds are good. So there's different reasons that we might have that accreditation, some by happenstance, some because we match up, or some because we pursue it. But that doesn't mean...
I think what you want to hear is it's purely for tourism, it's for business, it's for the accreditation industry is an industry, like a social justice industry, and it's going to help you with tourism. That's not necessarily good. What we want is shade and reduced water. Trees are the largest water users. So the water committee, being with the tree committee, is really excellent. And it gets down to that. And really, ideally, you would put in oaks, the 2 species of oaks that are in this area, if you could.
But you're not going to have everything just be, you have no idea.
Right.
You'd have to do analysis, see with all this, there's 92 native species, there's X number of non-native species that would be viable here. You cross-reference all that. You have no idea until you actually look at the data.
Okay, this conversation's been helpful to me because I did want to just at least get the discussion about what are our objectives for pursuing the accreditation. And I can see benefits to education, having trees, diversity for education. I can see it for biodiversity. I can see it for resiliency.
Right.
In terms of, well, we know that this climate is shifting, so we want to have trees that will survive under a hotter climate. I know Joshua trees are in trouble where they are. Maybe they'll grow well here someday, God forbid. So all of those things, I just wanted to be sure we were thinking it through. So I don't have any problem with pursuing it. It's just I wanted to be clear on what are our reasons for joining.
Thank you. Good conversation. Any other questions or comments with respect to this ad hoc presentation on trees?
So just to clarify as well,
No.
we are not moving right now until we actually have the inventory and the canopy and kind of move forward. Then we'll go forward with, all right, if we want to do these accreditations, discuss them more fully. Now that we know what we need to look for, and then because a lot of them involve education and programming and policy development, all things that will be part of an urban forestry management plan as well. And so we need to have the package ready to go for an accreditation, but we need to understand what that package looks like.
Good. I think we're now ready to move on to report and conversation about the Buildings Committee, which is Philip and Tom and Leo. Buildings. Who's going to take the lead on presenting the buildings information? Well, not on my list, but I'm willing to be flexible. I got trees, building, transportation on this form, so I may be mistaken. Which one are we going to do here? You're there. Vice Chair Conlon, you got the lead.
Philip and I are going to do this together. We met with Leo.
for comic relief.
Okay. Well, we met with Leo as well, and we did discuss the scope of all of the things that are in the report. The priority is reducing our reliance on natural gas, and the energy code is changing at the beginning of 2026. So the city will be engaging in preparations for adopting the new code. And the question is...
Excuse me, Tom. Can we get on the screen next to the buildings report? That would be helpful.
It's
Thank you.
page 43 of the agenda, or of the packet.
Here we go.
So,
Lovely.
So there's two actions that we specifically have on our list. One is to encourage electrification and efficiency in both residential and commercial buildings. And that involves outreach and education to the members of our city community. And we will be working on the city's website and outreach materials. We're planning to develop some custom materials, I guess. And of course, we're going to be relying on the great materials available through BayRen and other partners on that one. For the REACH code, I mentioned that. Now, the city will be obligated to adopt a new construction code that is equal to the state code or more aggressive than the state code. In addition, a lot of communities around the state adopt a so-called REACH code, and there's a great set of resources that I've put, and we clipped and stuck into this agenda packet, which have the existing REACH code templates for various different types of ways that cities go beyond the minimum. And important thing to remember is that all of these must be cost effective for the building applicants. So the state of California does not allow a city to say, do this when it's not cost effective. So the question for the city will be, do we want to do something on a more escalated basis than, between now and the new code to adopt a REACH code that is based on an existing template that was predicated on our current baseline code, the 2022 code, I think it is. Or should we be focused on 2026. And I think our committee discussed this and decided that it probably, the city only has, we're a small city. It's not like delaying this for a year will affect a tremendously large number of buildings. So for administrative purposes, just ease of efficient use of staff time and whatnot, I think what we're planning to do is to get comfortable with the existing templates that are out there, and then as the new REACH code templates that are predicated on the 2025 code, we'll be studying those at the ad hoc, and we'll be preparing to make a recommendation to to staff and then to the city council perhaps.
Yeah, just to sum it up, building codes change every 3 years in California. The city's going to adopt a code next year. If you go up to the first page of our report, please, can you go up here? It says in the second, adopt all electric and electric preferred REACH code.
Yeah.
Now, what you're looking at now is a preference in the updated code, the California State Code, for electricity over gas. So in part, they're doing this already.
Right.
And what you need to sort of focus on is that there are other ways to go further. Tom has done a great job of putting links in what he prepared. He did a great job in both this and the transportation. And so it's worth it if you have an interest in it. Go through what Tom has written. But it's sort of like we're in limbo in the point that we're adopting a new code that really has been estimated, for example, that it will save around 500 million cubic tons of carbon through the revisions that are being made in the current state code. So there's significant revisions. But there are people out there looking at what else can we do to go further. And we're looking at those guides, but the first step is likely going to be the state code gets adopted by the city next year, and then we start looking through another 3-year cycle, and what are they looking at doing in the future? What can we do now to change the code to look forward to the future? I mean, I may have said it in more words than you did, Tom, but that's the largest part of our discussions that we've had today.
And from the commission's point of view, we look forward to those recommendations, which can make a major difference in our target of 2030 net zero.
Yeah.
One last comment on the code business. One of the things that's happened in the last 2 years as the Public Utilities Commission has approved higher electricity rates. We're all noticing those, I assume, when we pay our PG&E bills. Is that has had a direct material effect on the price of electricity, which makes it more expensive to electrify, to go all electric, but the forecast analysis that's looked at what's going to happen to the price of gas is going to get much more expensive over the next several years. And we also know that the Bay Area Air Quality Management District is going to be phasing out space heating, water heating first, and then space heating, I believe. You won't be able to buy a replacement gas water heater or gas furnace after certain dates. So we need to be preparing our contractors for this, and there are links in here if anybody's interested in pursuing that more, but we are looking at that. We realize that energy affordability is a very important goal to maintain throughout this process. I'm going to jump on to several of the other things now. We are focused on increasing community energy efficiency. We had a couple of actions this year, sponsor lighting efficiency giveaway events. We have not identified any grant partners to promote such a thing. In terms of energy efficiency workshops and local energy conservation teams, we're going to be looking at the website and making sure that there are good links to these resources that are available to us through BayREN, the Sonoma Clean Power Energy Center, and the Rising Sun Group, which I think is probably sunsetted for this season, but will be useful to the city residents in the next year.
They're related to BayREN.
They're under funding from BayREN, right. So, and then finally, in the Promote Building Energy Benchmarking, I say finally for B2, that is, there is a REACH code that cites a method for doing that. We've evaluated that at the ad hoc, and right now our recommendation is not to pursue the home energy report, I think it's called, the federal 10-point scale for benchmarking of residential buildings. There's some reasons why they put it into a code. We will continue to look at that and maybe some refinements of that we might want to pursue here locally. In terms of solar, we have a goal of increasing the penetration of solar photovoltaic. Again, the Public Utilities Commission really changed the rules in solar by changing the net energy metering rules, and that has had a very direct effect on the viability of some solar contractors in our market. I'm happy to report that there are electricians and solar licensed contractors operating here in the Valley. We haven't lost them all. And a major company is also partnering with PG&E to do what they're calling virtual net metering, which is essentially they're aggregating the off-peak savings and giving some of that back to the customer, perhaps through a discounted solar installation. I'm not exactly sure. I think they're mostly pocketing it. I haven't looked at all the details of it. But the point here is that we do still have an active solar contractor market, and people should consider doing that. And then,
while you're on solar, a quick comment / suggestion to this ad hoc that's doing so much good work. I would urge you to continue to think about finding ways for the city of Sonoma to begin to support multi-housing systems that are shared systems in order to improve the economics by sharing in a cul-de-sac, for example, of 6 or 8 houses. A combined system could make a huge difference.
and you have just anticipated B4, consider community microgrids.
There we go.
Multifamily solar systems. And our task here is to explore grant opportunities to do this. You know, we did have Michael Heffler, one of our community members, and now I think appointee to the Sonoma Clean Power Advisory Committee. He did do a bit of a deep dive in this subject and found that there are some practical realities that make it difficult to do that in California, again, under Public Utilities Commission rules. That said, there is a new program that's funded. I didn't put it in the report, but I did find an email that we talked about it in the ad hoc a couple of months ago. So this is not dead. It's just that we will continue to monitor the space.
Excellent.
So that is our report.
Commissioner, questions, comments, applause?
Applause for sure. So 2 questions. The microgrids, for example, like we have several low-income older adult communities on the west side. I'm thinking about the mobile home park and things like that. Is there potential for model projects or grant-funded projects for that community? Let me ask all my questions, and you can just that. And then the other question I have is, it sounded like the legislature and the codes and improvements are on a 3-year cycle, and that we get new mandates. Is that a time horizon that we might say we can anticipate if we want to be prescient about trying to? I mean, you're not going to get ahead of the curve if you aren't thinking about a 3-year horizon? And is there a way to be forward thinking when that's the horizon? I don't know, what's your experience there?
Right. So the first one on community microgrids in individually owned homeowner associations or parks or other kinds of that's problematic because the Public Utilities Commission has rules in place, I think this might even be state law, that says if I sell power over my fence to my neighbor, I'm effectively becoming like a power company. So they've made it relatively difficult to do that. It's more easy for a single shopping center owner to put a microgrid in to support the critical, keep the Safeway running or keep the, or a hospital campus or a university campus. It's easier when that's a single entity which has multiple meters on it to aggregate and to create a microgrid under California law. And the electric wiring and the metering and all of that is technically feasible, but it's these policies that make it more difficult. So that's what we had tried to look into. That's what Michael Heffler had looked into, is to see if we could do it on single family or on some of the trailer communities, some of the mobile manufactured communities. And the answer to that is that's difficult at this point in time. And there are people working on it, but where I think it would be most, I think if we add in the resilience opportunity of having a islandable microgrid, if the power were to go out, if we would have some kind of a electricity system problem, that's where I think we should focus on some of our, our city operations, our police and fire building. Those kinds of buildings are the ones that probably deserve that resilience. And I think the city's already made some investments in the Emergency Operations Center to have battery and diesel backup. So
there's some interest in the Vets building, which of course is county owned, but for that kind of purpose, including in a fire or other emergency when the other electricity is off, it's a place for people to come and possibly charge up their systems and so on. So there is talk about the Vets building on First Street West.
Right, and the city, the state legislature passed 1373 bill this past session that would have given multifamily and I think schools the ability to do more solar, benefit from solar, and the governor vetoed that. Again, strengthening the prior directive from his Public Utilities Commission. So the plot thickens, the debate continues, and we clearly think that these would be good things to do. Your other question, I've forgotten.
Horizon.
The 3-year horizon on the codes. So we are just now beginning the code update cycle 3 years out. So that process is very technical and tends to be, it's all public, but it tends to be manufacturers, energy code experts, and other kinds of stakeholders, building trade associations and whatnot, who participate in that process. Cities sometimes do participate in it as well, but usually it's the technical people who are pushing it forward, and there will be lots of codes and
What I'm asking is, if you do a REACH code, in 3 years, are you just now going to be the required code?
yeah, the principle of the REACH code is for those cities who have the political will and the foresight to take these technologies which are feasible and cost effective and pilot them in their cities. Those become case studies of actual implementation. that 3 years later the whole state can adopt. And that is the process. It actually works really well in the building space because there is a very healthy ecosystem of research and development, strong technical and engineering studies, cost studies, and then this implementation engine. If we had this in transportation, in waste, in agriculture, we could actually be making progress on our climate goals. If you look at the building sector against these others, the building sector has been greatly improving its carbon footprint. It's really, per capita, has been coming down in buildings, and that's true in Sonoma County especially. So it's good for us to understand that, yeah, buildings have a good template for how to do this stuff. The 3-year cycles are there, and we can use them to our advantage.
Can I just add a couple of things? So on the REACH codes, California has already started reviewing embodied carbon in buildings where other states haven't. So they're really ahead of the curve in analyzing how we're going to measure embodied carbon. As far as grants go, I'll just give you an example. This applies both to transportation and for buildings, and especially batteries and energy charging stations. A couple of years ago, the Department of Energy set up a process where every state proposed what they would do with grants. California got $1 billion. My question to you is, what happens in January? Because these are electric cars, battery storage units that we got money for, and I just, it's just.
So this is the hot
your
topic
guess.
right now in all the, in DC and all the different groups. I'm reasonably optimistic that the fact that Elon Musk has joined the Trump family, apparently, that he will be advocating aggressively for electrification of vehicles. How that plays out remains to be seen. So I think on that one front, batteries in particular, I think will probably be okay. It's probably the only area of the Infrastructure Reduction Act, no, the inflation. I always get confused because the name just doesn't.
Ira and Bill.
We didn't reduce inflation, did we? If we had, we would be in power. But if so, yeah. The rest of the agenda, though, is really up in the air right now, and that's to be seen.
We will know more after the 20th of January. The way indications are coming out with the appointees, the excellent appointees we've been seeing. Anything else on buildings, team? Going once, twice, 2.5? Philip?
A couple things just on heat pumps and space and water heaters. Were the installation costs are rising. There's a number of problems with people cheating the system who are installers or convincing their customers not to get a building permit because they don't have to, which is not true. I don't think there was anything else that I've got that in addition on buildings.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on buildings going once, twice, and 2.5 times? Let's move the transportation ad hoc for the next one. That's HINERMAN, CONLON, and FOGRLBERG.
Yeah, so once again, we had a lot of activity in transportation this time. I'm pleased, got a lot of participation in the active transportation plan, various public opportunities that the city helped sponsor, and Cedra in particular gave some great input into that process. I know many of us did. There is an opportunity to review the pedestrian bicycle plan that has been drafted. and get comments in before the end of this month. Our ad hoc has not specifically talked about those granular details that are in there. But I did put into the report, I copied in the Vision Zero dashboard that shows the city of Sonoma and where we currently have the most crashes and the few fatalities over the last several years. We had 3 fatalities in the city of Sonoma. And that, of course, is one of the main goals of an active transportation plan, is to reduce the chance for those kinds of things to happen. One of the things that's occurred to us talking about this is that the city has we have our own traffic safety committee that's coordinated under the Public Works Department, and that process appears to be very driven by community member complaints, forms that are filed identifying individual concerns about a traffic safety issue. One of the things, though, that I think I've noticed, for example, now maybe that is 5th Street there, I can't quite tell.
That's Fifth Street right there.
No, on the east side of town, there, you know, they put in those speed bumps, those speed
Yeah.
tables at
They're not tables, they're
They're
just
on
bumps.
East Napa.
East Napa
at
Street,
4th and 5th.
including one where you're leaving the city and then everybody speeds like mad right afterwards.
Right.
It's a
And-
bit of an odd location for the outbound lane, I find, as opposed to the inbound lane.
Right. And so, and there was a lot of, you know, Q&A around, you know, the large group of community members came forward and said they really wanted to see a solution in that area. The point I'm trying to make here is that that area does not have the same level of injury intensity that we have in other parts of the other main parts of the city. So I encourage our friends on the Traffic Safety Committee to become more familiar with this data. I know that some cities now are doing, whenever there is an injury, they do a little like a charrette where they bring the police department in, they bring in the planners, they bring everybody together and say, okay, what happened? Why did this happen? What can we do to make this not happen again? And we had that up at Verano at Highway 12, and we got some very quick response from the city and from the county both, and I think people are looking at that, and Caltrans actually had a bunch of people out, and that process works. So I'm just looking forward to our Traffic Safety Committee weighing in on this active transportation plan and just being, I think they should be the ones that own this process, because they really are the ones that the city looks to for that. So there's other stuff in the report. I won't belabor it here. We're pleased to see the bicycle parking going in. We are, you know, excited about the cool corridors for bike and ped. And I did have a question about whether the city trail to the plaza, is that, where is, it's on our list as a 2025 target, enhanced pedestrian and bike access between the bike trail, I guess, and the plaza. I know that's part of the Depot Park and maybe First Street improvements. Is that something that's going to be moving forward? Do you know that? Is that Public Works question?
I'm gonna go with Public Works.
Yeah.
And probably part of that yet to be scoped Parks Master Plan, the Plaza Master Plan rather, not the Parks.
Right.
Plaza Master Plan.
That was my understanding. It's like, I just wanted to be sure that it's on our list, so it's not something we've taken time to talk about, but it does, it is something we do hope to see improved. And what else we got? There is a very poor reproduction of Cedra's great. It's better in color on the screen. Corridors and Greenlink's concept plan.
That's really,
And
there's other maps that are better than that.
well, that's the one I had when I was under stress of putting this together.
It's lovely.
And then, as I said earlier, electrification of personal transportation. These are both 2026 goals, but we're going to be wanting to improve EV charging access. And in public transportation, yes. So good news in this front. The sales tax measure that we've been paying, quarter-cent sales tax, Sonoma County, is sunsetting and is being replaced by a new sales tax measure called the Go Sonoma measure. And transit funding will be doubled in Sonoma County, which will directly benefit the route that goes from Sonoma to Santa Rosa, which is a really key route for our community. We have on our local goals expand the 32 Sonoma shuttle. And that's the free hop-on, hop-off bus that is popular in town, but doesn't run as much as maybe would be necessary. The work of the E&O group with the chamber and others, very exciting that there might be a electric shuttle at some point. It occurs to us in the transportation committee, though, that we're going to want to think about resources that are currently going to that big bus, and how do we make sure that the e-shuttle might be integrated with that in terms of serving the same group of people? Is it serving the same group of people? What are the objectives of the two programs? And could we, we don't want to have redundancy where we don't need it. We want to have increased service. So there is money available, and it's a good time for us to reach out to Brian Albee, who will be leaving the transportation agency, the Sonoma County Transit Agency, at the end of the year for his retirement. But they're electrifying their fleet and making great progress in all that front. So will that be interrupted? Perhaps some of that will be held back because Tesla doesn't make a bus as of the last I checked. But I wouldn't be surprised if they start making postal delivery trucks. I would certainly be talking to certain people if I was in that position. Who knows? Maybe they'll make buses too, and tanks and all kinds of things we need. Electric.
That's not in the report.
That's not in the report. That's just ad lib. That's all I have on that. And then, right, the last two things on our list have to do with banning fossil fuel stations and drive-through windows. And we've put together some resources for Jacob to take a look at, and including several of the communities nearby us that have already done this and have a track record for doing so, have published stories about, newspaper stories about why it was a good idea for them to do so. And we would not be the first by a long shot. Petaluma, Rohnert Park, Santa Rosa, Sebastopol, Sonoma County, and Windsor have all passed bans on new fossil fueling stations. And I just point out that one of the grandfathered stations in Santa Rosa, they tried to come back and ask for it to be reanimated. It's almost 15-year-old project, and they were unable to move forward because of the structure of the Santa Rosa ordinance. So that we don't need any new gas stations, that's for sure. So that that's all I think we have in transportation. Questions?
It's a marvelous report. Thank you, Commissioner Conlon. Commissioner, questions at this point? Norma? No, just wiggling. Yeah, okay. Anything else? That then concludes our ad hoc presentations, a huge amount of very impressive and important information. Any, on this topic, anything else from fellow commissioners? I'm well aware of the time. If not, I'll call that topic to an end. That's item 4, and go to commissioner reports and comments. Do individual commissioners, prior to the chair having some final comments, have comments to make? Jennifer?
You skipped me.
I skipped you. It's on another page. It's
No,
back over
I'm at the very
here.
bottom.
My error. I blame it on the time.
It's okay. Before we get to that, though, I do want to go back. So, Commissioner McCloskey was placed, partially without his knowledge, on the building ad hoc committee. Buildings. Sorry. And no problem. And then and then I just spoke with Commissioner Conlon, who is already currently on 4 committees, and so he is stepping down from 2.
Free fall.
It's not a free fall.
It's not a free
just
fall?
2. It can't be all. So he will be stepping down from trees and from grants and funding.
That's right.
And then Commissioner McCloskey has stated interest in the trees. Is that still the case?
So I had sent an email, but I don't know where it landed, that if that trees committee is happening in 25, yes. It is?
Yes, we're continuing on with this project.
Yeah, so I would be able to go over to trees, and I want to watch, though, that if this opens up something with the Chamber of Commerce, that's an area where I'd probably go over that way also.
Okay. So I'll add Commissioner McCloskey to trees, and then are you still interested in staying on the building side?
Yes, I think right now, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I really liked all the standards on the building side, and I'm looking at how that might work on the trees. Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And what then do we have for a 3rd commissioner on grants and funding?
We don't need to necessarily have 3. It's, as we've discussed, grants and funding is really the collection of different grants. So, that could be everybody also helping to identify grants. The grants and funding, I will be calling on to help when we start applying as well. And then I'll talk to our youth member about which one she wants to help.
And she could be on more than one, as we understood with Kendall.
Yes.
She did say she thought 1 might be her limit.
Okay,
Just
let's
FYI.
recognize that at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And then for director's comments, I will be putting together the draft of the calendar for next year, but it's pretty consistent year to year unless we call a special meeting. And like I was stated earlier, it'd be late January, early February that City Council is going to set their goals, and then we'll take a look at what those goals are and how they fit within our work program. Next year, also to remember, that's our general plan year, really focusing, and so when the general plan draft elements are ready for review, we focus on too. So just letting everybody know. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Jennifer, and apologies for having the wrong piece of paper in front of me. We're now at item 5. We're nearly done. Commissioner reports and comments that are not on the agenda. Does any commissioner choose to make some final comments before we wrap up? Norma?
I'm thinking about how much information is shared due to the work of the ad hocs. There's a lot here. And I'm wondering, I know we only meet 4 times a year, but I'm wondering if we can prioritize and maybe spend more time on 2 than 4. And I just throw it out to see how other people feel, because there's so much great information, especially your reports. I gotta revamp my thinking. And so I'm just curious, and I know we have a lot of things coming up, like the general plan, and looking at what the council is gonna focus on, but yeah.
Excellent point, for sure, about coverage versus timing and exhaustion. And making sure maybe we can do 2 each time instead of buffeting them all together. It's all a new and evolving process. We could have a special meeting before the next 3 months meeting if we have enough to cover in the way of reports. Those are all possibilities that we can consider early in the new year, basically. Sandra, you look like you're in the game.
Well, I was thinking about this earlier when I was looking at the strategies that we have and the trying to have bang for buck in terms of climate impact. And I was thinking that it would be useful to have a weighting to some of these strategies in terms of how much climate impact, in terms of what sector is really most important to be hitting, in terms of weighting, in terms of does this strategy have a direct impact? Is it really something that is it weighted towards actually doing something? Is it easy to do, or is it something you're mandated to do? Something along those lines, because that kind of measurement or weighting would help us understand we have to talk about this. It's a mandate. It doesn't matter if it has an impact or not, or we have to talk about this because it's transportation, and this is where most of the climate impacts are coming from, or something like that. I don't know. I just wanted to throw this out there because some topics are really worth spending some time on. Other ones are feel-good topics.
And sometimes, of course, the feel-good topics energize an entire community to act, and so we have to be careful not to look only and solely at GHG emissions reductions. When a city council said trees are our top priority for
But
the
that could be
year.
a weighting. That could be a weighting that we
Yeah.
put in there. I mean, that doesn't mean it gets dismissed. It could be a weighting factor.
And I'd like to suggest that this would also help us with our residents. You know, this is what we're focusing on and why. You know, the return on investment to forwarding this as a project benefits a greater number of people, and so having criteria,
A rubric.
exactly, and weights to that, I think would be an excellent idea.
So I think that's all good discussion, and my head is full tonight too. Maybe we can do what Cedra's suggesting in response to you, Norma, is that in our next reports, we can kind of weight the things we want to spend the time on. I think this was like the first time we did a really comprehensive ad hoc dump, and there's a lot of great material here, a lot of progress to report. I don't think we could have done the meeting shorter than we did, but we do need to prioritize, and now we've got staff. Great to have Jacob on board now. So, a lot of this was kind of oriented toward staff as well. So, I think in the future we can endeavor to be a little bit more concise in what we do in the public meeting, maybe weighted as you suggest, and then also be a little clearer about what our action asks of the commission for discussion or for action might be.
Yeah, and I'd like to follow up. I think the reports, before we submit them, might be a good idea to talk with Jennifer and Jacob on where does this fall with the city. You know, we may have our own perspective on how it weights, but you two would have a better understanding of its actionableness that we should understand before we submit our reports. So I think what we think is a good idea and should be actionable may not be what the city can really move forward on, and just closing that loop and even making it discernible. Like, here's what we think, and there's, you know, not a lot of support for that right now, so that we get both sides of it, because we're all here because of our passions. However, our passions are really only as good as what the city can embrace. So looking at both sides of that, I think, is important.
Excellent comments. Other comments? Other commissioner comments? I'm gonna, at recognizing the hour, just do a short thought that I wrote a day or so ago as final thoughts this evening. First of all, I want to thank each and every one of the commissioners. Your commitment and your energy are central to our continuing success. Second, a thought, rather brief, about recent developments and their implications for this commission. It's easy for many of us to be depressed, that's for sure, and worried, very worried. As a former senior official of the United States Environmental Protection Agency and the state of California, I'm deeply concerned about the future of EPA and its work, to be sure. To me, this all suggests, indeed demands, that we redouble our commitments and our efforts to achieve greater and effective climate action results here in Sonoma and in our neighboring Springs area, really all of Sonoma Valley. It's a way for each of us, and together all of us, to act positively in this emerging era, not just responding to negative pressures and forces, but finding ways to move forward towards our stated goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2030. As we have seen in our many actions and commitments tonight, we can be climate smart in so many ways. Let's do so. Thank you for all of you.
Would you like to adjourn?